All right, here we are, another great conversation here at Nancy McCready Ministries. And I want to introduce you to one of, and I say this all the time because I run with the most fabulous people. So I want to introduce you to another great friend of ours. We are family friends, right? He is a great partner to Nancy McCready Ministries. And so I want you to meet my friend, Aaron Coronis, who lives just a few miles from me. So how are you today, Aaron? It's great to see you.
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on. And it's great to be with you and be able to be a part of this podcast. So I'm doing wonderful today.
Yes, well, it is awesome. So yes, we are going to use portions of this on the podcast. And we're also going to be putting it, just so you know, all over social media. We're going to send it out on our email subscription. It's going to go out everywhere that we can because we want to encourage others to know what is going on here at Nancy McCready Ministries. We want you to know the caliber of people that we get to know and interact with every single day. And we also want you to know some of the partners that have chosen to partner with us. Even though we're family friends, we've worked together, we have all these different layers of friendship that we've had over the years. One of the greatest treasures to us here at NMM are the partners we have. And Aaron and his wife, Trika, happen to be some of the most stellar partners that any ministry could have. And so we are so glad to be together today. And this is a conversation that I want to just allow it to unfold. But I'm going to have to tell you guys, you see this smile on Aaron's face right now? Let me tell you, when he first met me, no, that smile was not there. So Aaron, why don't you just talk a little bit about yourself? Now tell them who you are and what you do, right, as your full-time work, and then tell them how it is that we met.
Excellent. Well, so I work for a large utility company in the Houston, Texas area. And so I manage a group of engineers and designers that engineer the infrastructure for the surrounding area. And so we've got just about 2.2 million customers. And so we that's what I do is, I'm in the business world in the utility company. And so I get to do that and deal with customers every day and, lots of fun and interesting things. When hurricanes come in, we're the first responders to go in and put all the power, the lights back on for everybody. So it's I've been doing that for quite some time now, and it's a wonderful job. So I'm a normal guy.
Yes, well, yes, maybe on certain levels you are. Yeah, kind of, sort of. That's right. But it's so important to know because we talk all the time about the nameless, faceless people. Like that's all of us, right? That God is living in, that God is working in and through, right? We're just regular, ordinary folks, right? But God connects us in ways that are very relational and are very purposeful, even though they don't start out that way.
Right.
We want today, right, to be able to encourage folks that no matter where you start, it's how you finish, right? And it's very important who it is that God connects you with relationally. So just share a little bit about how it is that we first met all those years ago.
Yes. So when my wife and I and our family, we first began going to Christian City Fellowship, and where Nancy was the executive pastor, and so when we began to come into the church, I heard somebody preaching on Wednesday night, and there were two different options. You could either go to the main service where Nancy was preaching, or there was another option to go to and to go to another class. And so I very quickly made the decision that whatever it was that Nancy was shoveling, I wasn't in for that. And so I decided, my wife and I decided to go ahead and go to the other option.
Whatever the other option was, you were going.
I was going. It didn't really matter.
It didn't really matter what the option was, right? Okay, so let's get that clear. Go ahead.
Yes, and so that's what we.
Was this last week? When was this?
We're talking 2013, I believe.
Okay,
2013, 2014. So it's been a few years back.
It has.
This wasn't yesterday.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, but so we started. We went to that class, and I think we went 12 weeks straight. and until you were no longer the one preaching on every Sunday. And so, but
No, it wasn't on Sundays. It was on Wednesday.
I'm sorry, on Wednesday night.
That's
Yes.
right.
And so some time passed, and I began to hear this, hear something about a cross encounter. And so God was really doing something in my life, and I had this hunger, about me, and I thought, man, I want to go to this. And so I signed up to go to this cross encounter, and I walk in to the cross encounter, and the first session starts, and there's Nancy McCready. And then I began to understand that she was going to be who I was listening to the entire weekend.
Yes, for like 48 hours.
Yes. And so to my not delight, I was pretty upset. I even went out and called my wife after the first session and just said, "You are not going to believe what I've gotten myself into."
I love this. I'm telling you, I've heard this story, I don't know how many times, but I got to tell you, I'm loving this. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
So, but by the end of that first night, things begin to change. Not just, my thoughts of Nancy, but my entire world of what I thought this Christian life was about. It began to crumble and just really and truly wrecked the way that I thought that this Christian life was supposed to be lived. And so it was not long after that cross encounter that I made an appointment to go and meet with Nancy willingly, and without being bamboozled.
Under no duress. Nobody made you. Nobody forced you. Right. That's right.
Absolutely. So yeah. So I decided to go in and to sit down and have a conversation with Nancy, and just eventually enter into the discipleship process that we had at our church that Nancy had developed, and began to sit with her probably, I think, over 14 or 15 months.
Wow.
Every week, and just begin that process of discipleship with her.
So you began to realize, after a while, that it wasn't hardly even required that you liked me or that you liked the sound of my voice. Yeah. You pretty shortly thereafter, after coming into Cross Encounter, after that first session or so, you began to realize that the connection, right, that required you to have to listen, right, that connection was more about what God was doing in you than about any preferences or anything else. You began to realize God is about to deal with me, right, in a way that wasn't punishment, right? It wasn't that you were in trouble, right? He was doing this because he'd written something over your life. Could you just share, like, what were one or two of the main things that you began to hear that brought about such a massive shift? Because later we're going to talk about the fact that there's a cross encounter coming up soon. And I just wonder if you'd like to share what were some of the things that you heard that began to literally tilt your whole world? So,
I'm somebody I've been churched most of my life. So I was not an unchurched person. I was a youth pastor. I'd gone to Bible school. And so, but my understanding of this Christian life and ministry was, that we were to do things for God and to, be busy about the ministry. And so that is a lot of what most of my, church world was about being good and about doing. And that's what my understanding of this Christian life was it was about looking good. It was about being good. And regardless of the way that my private reality was, as long as my public persona and what everyone saw, as long as that was good, that is what this life was about as being a Christian, and just trying to do the best that I could as a follower of Jesus Christ. Right. And so as just that very beginning, those beginning sessions there, that first night, you enter in and you start to explain what it is that God has always wanted.
That's right.
and he's always wanted sons.
That's so
And
right.
that's before any of my mess, any of my junk, any sin that I'd ever committed. But you begin to talk about before the foundations of the world, that God had a plan,
That's
and
right.
that plan was still on.
That's right.
And so when you've got somebody that is a doer, and that is so set on what things look like, and the perceptions that others have of you, and how that drives your thought and understanding of your worth and who you are. When you begin to hear that there was a plan that God had for your life before you were born, that began to do something to me, because everything was about the doing. It was all about the perception, and what begins to crumble is because that's so important to you. It was so important to me of the way things looked, and the things that I did. And when you understand that none of that was the point.
That's right.
The point was life himself. It wasn't doing.
That's right. Yeah, because you begin to realize that God doesn't place that same value on all that outward, external, right? But yet we think he does. We think that's actually what is the most important. And God expects this, and God tells you to do this, right? And so even though it was coming through my voice, it was his voice, right?
Yes.
You were encountering him.
Yes.
And you began to experience, if you will, that grip of him speaking through the power of the cross. And it literally began to take hold of you. He began to take hold of you. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the only way I can really describe it is, other than that crumbling is, if you've lived your entire life, and you were named something completely different, you had a completely different identity. And then one day, your true parents came and explained to you who you were. Everything that you had learned up to that point begins to crumble, because you now have to learn really and truly who you are.
That's right. Every perception, everything gets challenged. And that is no small thing. So what we're talking about here today, what you and I are both, right, and both involved in, right, is no small thing. Now, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you say this crumbling would be likened unto the word that we oftentimes use, which is implosion, that it is a controlled collapse that God himself is doing? Is that part of what you mean? Because I know what it is to stutter through, and you're like, I'm trying to find a word to describe what in the world is happening. And sometimes it is quite difficult. As one who is going to bring that message, it's quite difficult sometimes to find the words. But is that a part of what you're talking about? It's literally, you begin to see that he's bringing all of that down if it's not built on him.
Yeah, absolutely. I had built my life. I had built what this perception of the Christian life was to be about. I had and I'd been developed and seeing, this is what it should look like. And then as that initial explosion took place, in that cross encounter, then explosions over the next 14 months, and honestly, over from that point until today and going on, explosions of truth continue to take place, that is bringing me into agreement with the way that God thinks, rather than the way that I think. Right. And so that is a completely different way of living than what I had ever seen or thought.
Yeah, because being a good Christian, right? The things that you said, we've got to be excellent in ministry, and you said I was busy in the ministry, I was being good. And what did you hear at Cross Encounter about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? What did you hear? Because this is honestly, no matter if I'm in Germany or if we're here in Texas, wherever we are, this is one of the most piercing truths that begins to literally cause the crumble, right? That is so necessary if we're going to know the Father. But what did you hear for you in your own words? What did you hear in that opening session.
So, I mean, remember, I did go to Bible school.
Yes, you did. I've never been, I just want to point that out. I've never been.
But and I was a youth pastor, and right. So I mean, I had heard this,
yes,
I'm sure several times throughout my life. But my whole point and life and the perceptions was about being good and not being evil, not doing the bad things. But when you began to teach on and show us that the evil was on the exact same tree as good, that in all of my evil doing, as I swung over to the side of the tree that had the good on it, to look back and realize that I was still on the same tree, that I was still, the source of my life was still on that same tree of self, of doing everything on my own. So it didn't matter whether or not my things or my doing was good or whether it was evil, it was still evil. And that dealt with me heavily, because that's what life was about. It was about doing. It was about not being on, and now seeing it wasn't about being on one side of the tree. It was about being on the other side of the tree. And that tree needed to be chopped down. And so that was huge. And then the point, it was always life. There was 2 trees in the garden, and that we were always meant not to be our own source of life, but
that is so right.
Because we don't have that ability within ourselves.
That's right. Well, and that's why the crumble is so the timing of God, the timing when He makes it so clear. I mean, maybe we don't catch it right at the beginning, right? But as it begins to unfold, we realize He really has come for us. Yeah. And He knows that eventually there's going to be a deep, deep tiredness.
Yeah.
That the burden of producing our own life is eventually for us strong horses. Okay, so raise your hand if you're a strong horse. I'd just like to know. Thank you very much. All right, so right, so He knows what that's going to take for each person, right? And so when those things begin to crumble and they begin to crack, right? Because we can still have enough energy to prop up the persona, as you said, right? But inwardly we know things are not going. They're not going well, right? My energy isn't going to be able to sustain. I'm not going to be able to continue this, in the same way. So share how that then progressed to in the mentoring. And was it just a bunch of head knowledge and discipleship as far as just Bible knowledge, or what began to happen in the process of mentoring? And I know the screen has frozen a little bit, but just continue on. It'll catch up.
Yes. So, I mean,
there you go.
The daily, just feeding and beginning to what was happening over the mentoring process and the discipleship process was that I was beginning to learn who I am in Christ, the identity and the inheritance that I had received, and learning how to appropriate, those things such as the mind of Christ. I mean, my mind was so jacked up, and so it was, but I went from a place of doing to a rest.
Oh, yeah.
I love the way that, the Message Bible says it, in Matthew 11:28, I mean, are you tired? And he goes through it. I took that yoke of sin and that burden off of myself, or, and allowed that yoke of sonship to be what is now upon me. And it was a rest that was taking place, but it was a learning, because you're unlearning all of that which you have learned and relearning, the way that He sees and the way that He loves. And so, I mean, and it affects not just, it'd be wonderful, because it affected the way that my relationships were. It began to affect the things that I do and the way that I do them. But that's not even the point. That there was a rest that I began being who
right.
he called me to be,
That's right.
rather than doing. And because, I mean, all the doing is going to come. It's
There's
going to
work,
bubble
isn't
up.
there?
Yes.
Yeah, there
Yes.
is work to be done. But he has this order that he puts it in, is that he says, now you come to me if you're tired, you're weary, right? And take on my yoke, the yoke of the Son.
Yeah.
He says, then learn of me. So this isn't lazy learning, right?
Yeah.
Like you said,
Yeah.
this is some intense learning. You're unlearning everything that you once thought. You're learning of him, and then you are relearning, right? And it continues on. It's not a lazy, passive life of cheap grace, right?
Right.
It's intense.
Yeah, it is a steady leaning in.
That's right.
And
That's a great way of saying it.
I mean, I see, I mean, the way that I picture that, I mean, my head is on the breast of the Father, and I'm leaning into him, and allowing him to love me.
That's right.
And not asking him not to, not asking or avoiding, different things that he's wanting to share and to impart into me. But I am leaning into him, and I'm allowing him to love me like I have never been loved before, but yet the way that I was created to be loved.
That's correct. That is so right. Because this is why this sin, this other tree you were talking about, it's really a tree of independence.
Yes.
And so there we have to meet our own needs, that nature that we inherit from Adam. We meet our own needs, all that. And that's a part of the weariness, is after a while, it's just like, look, I'm not going to do, I just can't keep doing all that, right? Because you begin to realize that love was not something that you were supposed to have to work for, but it is a true gift of the person of God himself, that you let him love you. And that can sound so simple, but I tell people it's simple until you try it, right? Yes. And then when you try it, you're like, everything in us can fight that. Right. But when he begins to do the work in the discipleship that we were put together, right, for, right? Yes. We were partners in that, as since you said it, I can say it, that I was your mentor, and I had the privilege of walking with you, right, through those many months. I didn't do much. Wouldn't you agree? Ultimately, I didn't do very much, did I? Come on, you want to say it?
I do remember I do remember one time that you even made the statement that, I didn't even have to be, excited about coming in.
That's exactly. And you were like, yes, this is good. This is good. Right. Because so many trappings we put on people that somehow they've got to come and they've got to be excited, and you're going to have to do this and that. No, you just come, like you said, you just come and begin to take on this yoke of sonship. But to take on that yoke, he exposes to you the sin and the slavery yoke, right? And that independence, because that has to be put down out of our freedom to really be able to live and function in the yoke of being a son, because this is what he's after, is sonship. This is what he desires, right? Yeah. And so you chose, after that time, you chose to enter in to that, right? And so I'm pretty sure that we came to a point, you and I, that our relationship shifted. Why? Well, because you began to know, that there was something the Father was doing in you.
Yes.
And I can reflect back and I can remember the gripping moments, not of what I was telling you or what I was teaching you, right? Because I always kind of joke, it's like, I can't go in the secret place with people. Yes. The Father waits for you there, and you go in, just you and him. No spouse, no pastor, no mentor, no leader. No one can go in the secret place with you, but I do wait outside the secret place. And then I'm like, what did he say to you? What did he share with you? Right. And then for you to be able to process that and to begin to recognize, right, in the daylight of where we fellowship with him. And so our relationship began to shift by the Father's doing and by his purposes. So now that's been like almost 10 years ago. Come on. Yes. Okay, so like what has been happening, in these last 10 years, because we certainly didn't stay at that place.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, after mentoring, I know that I wanted to stay, in this work, but also, in mentoring, I began to realize that not only had I received life, and that I had received, his life, but yet I'd also received the urgent task of passing this message on. And so that was something that I began, I was invited into to an internship and begin to go through that. And then eventually sitting in and learning how to be a mentor and to be able to disciple others. And so I entered into that, and I began mentoring other men, and I've been doing that for a few years now. And I mean, what a privilege
Yes, it is.
it is to sit with people as the Father has begun to impart into them and to show them who they are. And then I mean, it is a privilege because you're witnessing sons growing up and being taught and being taught by him, and we're simply there to be the door to open up so that they can, walk through there, make that decision daily.
Because God has set that in motion. That's not you and I making big of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
What we're finally realizing is we know that God is the source, but he lives in his sons, and he wants to pass on life. And I love that you use this term, the urgent task. This is out of Romans 1:5. It's a steady urgency. It doesn't mean we run around all alarmed and fanatic and chasing people down, because discipleship is by pursuit, not by force, right? So, but I love this, right? That you began to realize, wait just a minute, I've entered in for me because I see my need, right, for him and this work. And that compelling began to, really began to emerge inside of you. Nobody made you do that. Nobody said, Aaron, you've got to do this. This is your next step. You've got to do it, right? That what began to happen was you had the opportunity and you stepped into it. And you said, yes, train me. Let me continue to pursue, right? And so you have been pursuing, would you agree? You have been pursuing now for quite some time.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And, and I know that it's not, it's certainly not the old doing mentality, because, there was not too many men in my life that made me want to, minister to other men and to have them, take on and learn this way of living. That was the Holy Spirit, thing. That was not something that was drummed up or mustered up by me, but it was a heart that of the Father for his sons, that there is a life that he has given them to live, and it's time for the sons of God to be living, the male and female, sons side by side. So I've begun to do that and be able to be that door, and mentor with other men over the last few years, and then of course now finding myself as a leader of Pavilion Ministries in Christian City Fellowship, and all that looks like, the cross encounters that we do, so that other people can begin to enter in for themselves.
That's right.
So it is
to hear the message and meet the people. I mean, and to be able to see the people that are literally making themselves available to actually disciple others. I think it's the right of every believer to be discipled. And it's like, what are we in the church? What are we doing? Now, I'm not saying that as being critical. I'm saying it as a provoking thought, is that thank God there is a place and a people. And places are coming up, and then we're going to talk here in a minute about how you're a partner with NMM, because God, and not just through us, I mean, through many, many people, God is having his way, but he is causing places and people to spring up who will literally be that door. How will people be discipled if one disciple doesn't turn around and say, I'm willing,
right?
I'm willing to be a door. Right? We don't take on the responsibility of making it happen, but we're willing to be responsible to others to pass this on if it's what they choose to do, because I pursued, right? I mean, we don't really take any credit for all this pursuit, right? I mean, we know the Lord was working, right? He has brought us in this way, but I pursued, you pursued, and we know the value of this pursuit when people begin to say, hey, I know there has to be more, right? And then to be able to open that door and show them, yes, there actually is. And there are people that when the lights go off, the services are over, everything, there are people that are like, yes, we can talk next week. Yes, we can walk through that. Yeah. So you find yourself today now, all these years later, as someone who has this very, very strong privilege and responsibility of oversight of this one particular ministry at Christian City Fellowship called Pavilion Ministries. It is a part of Christian City Fellowship, a part of their vision, which is we build big people, right? And so now you find yourself in this very new season, right? As you've just simply continued to pursue the Father and let him love you, let him mature you, let him grow you. Now you find yourself overseeing that work and taking it into new depths. So would you just share, like, what are you doing right now? What have you been doing over the last few weeks? This is a new way that God has given you to be able to pass this message and work on.
Yeah. So over the last few weeks, back in September, I had the privilege of going and being with you and for a cross encounter in South Carolina or North Carolina. And so we, while I was there, I began to just hear, this, from the Holy Spirit, just, that there's new things coming, that there was a new way that we were going to be doing things, because we do things typically one-on-one with people, and we continue to do those things because that's certainly important. But he was just showing me that there was something new coming, and so I just began to press in and just to listen. And he was telling me, we needed to start a school, and I began to hear those things, and so I was like, I just okay. Okay. And you and I had a conversation about it, because I knew, I knew what he was telling me, but I just needed to keep on putting one foot in front of the other. And so we've been holding a discipleship school for the last 6 weeks. And so we're fixing to have our 7th week here, and then this next Monday. And so there are almost 40 people signed up to go on an 8-week Monday night, from 6 o'clock to 9:30 for 8 weeks straight, to enter in for themselves. And I would have been pleased as could be if I had 4 or 5 people.
That's right. And I remember saying to you, Aaron, yours is to simply open that door, do what God has put within your heart under the vision of your pastors, do what he has put within your heart. And I remember watching your face, watching as those numbers began to climb. Not that numbers are important, but that each one represents a person that was hungry, that was responding in a way that needed a kind of a new door.
Yeah.
Right? A new way for that door to open. And so that has been a deep training ground even for you, right? Because every time we go in deeper, we are practicing what we preach. We are leaned into him, and we are allowing him, right, to be able to expand and enlarge as he sees fit. And then here come the people.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So it has definitely been a learning, experience. And, but it's, you come to the place where you realize that it's not, you certainly have responsibility and you have preparation, but allowing him to be the one that carries the burden. And we are simply being who he's called us to be, and being, unto him a son, and just allowing that life to flow out of us into other people. They begin to experience the same thing. And so, over these last few weeks, just getting to see the response of people to him. I'm certainly thankful that there was obedience, that I certainly obeyed what it was that I was hearing him say. And so this is certainly a new season, but it also requires a new level of leaning into him and learning and just, staying with him, abiding in him.
That's right. I was just going to say abiding, because this is when we learn in such real time with him. And we say, Father, if this is what you're showing me, and it's like literally as we learn as we go. And I have heard myself saying to people, and a couple of times recently, as I travel, do different things, right? People say, oh, Nancy, you must get tired. And I said, well, yes, I do get physically tired. I said, but this is like the best tired there is that we don't need to act like, we never get tired. We're never frustrated. But I don't live in such a way as I abide. I don't live in a way in some ministry mindset of all that I'm doing and how much I have, it's like we need to punch that right in the head, right?
Yeah.
Is that no, I'm working with my Father, like literally, like either this is really true or it's not. So yes, I get very, very tired because I'm getting older, and I was going to say it before you said it. Okay, so I'm getting older, okay, because I know how you brothers are, So I'm getting older, and I'm like, but honestly, the tiredness is like the best kind of tired because you lay your head down at night and I am literally walking with the Father, and He carries all the big weight.
Right.
Sure, I make the decisions. But come on. We are getting to live that out first in our own lives, right? In our own lives.
Right.
We are facing many difficulties and challenges. You and I in our families, it's one of the reasons why we're bonded, right?
Yes.
And Trika and Wynn and I, family, friends, we've done vacation together. We do all that, right? It doesn't mean we see each other all the time and we're not joined at the hip or anything like that, but we share a lot, right, in the common steps of our lives, in our lives of our children and ministry and just, all of these things. And you and Wynn serving in many layers of leadership at Christian City still together, even though I've transitioned out from that role. You guys are there in layers of leadership, right, together, you, Wynn, Trika, right? And so we have an understanding. We know, wow, we are facing challenges. We have had to see ourselves completely undone, right? Yes. Over the years. We're not pretending, and so we know that when we go to sleep and when we awake, we know, well, it might be difficult. It might be pressing and challenging, but we are with Him. And therefore, our labor of love is not draining us and burning us out and breaking us down, and right. And I think that's because the way Jesus lived it was always first the Father and then people. Do you find this helpful to know this?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's a different way of living. You're not, because when it's people, right? They're drawing something, sucking life out of you, right? Or you're trying to muster up life to be able to give to them.
That's right.
And simply, I'm a conduit. I'm being used of my Father, and it's Him doing it. It's His outcome. I'm being obedient, and He's simply using me to do what it is that He's created me to do, and for Him to get what He's always wanted.
Right.
And so. So it's definitely a different way of living and being able to be in rest. Yeah,
that's right. To work from rest. And sometimes when we try to explain these things, I tell people, I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain all that. You might just want to enter in for yourself. Let's go. And I promise you, He will make it real inside of you, and He will cause you to have an understanding. Because I think you would say this with me, is that we don't want to teach so well and do everything so well. People don't have to go to Him to get it.
Right.
Right. We want to share enough, teach enough, live enough, right, that it might create some hunger in some people, that they would begin to pursue Him, because we know that is the way that it's going to happen. And so you and I have walked together as friends and people in ministry together. Now, we've talked about several different layers of that, but I also want you to share a little bit about what it's been for you to be a partner. You and Trika are very integral partners for NMM, for Wynn and I, right? Like when Wynn has had, issues with health that came up suddenly, you were suddenly on the scene. I would be in Europe, something would happen, and you would be immediately there. So the partnership, the friendship, right? All of that connection it can't be described. It's on many different layers and levels. But we have also partnered together, you with NMM. I get to have some small part in pouring into you as you are working there, overseeing Pavilion Ministries and all. But you are quite an integral part of NMM financially and with discipleship projects. I've been able to send you out. I mean, I would send you out anywhere to go and get people ready to do a cross encounter. You're like a great liaison, okay, for cross encounter. But we've done several things together in-house right here, traveled stateside. We haven't done any international yet, have we? No,
not yet. No.
No, but you did have everybody around the world send dirt, didn't you?
Yes,
You
I did.
So I'm not going to let this pass without showing this. This isn't here because you and I are visiting. This is here every single day. And I've got probably, I'm thinking close to about 20 vials of soil from different nations and different places that you put together. You contacted all those folks that I'm working with and said, let's send Nancy some dirt, right? Let's get some dirt to represent the territory and the nations, right? All of that. So such an integral part of Nancy McCready Ministries and what God has given us to do here. So can you just talk a little bit about what that's been like as you've watched us over this last 4.5 to 5 years step into this part of our assignment at NMM?
Yeah. So, I mean, I received what I received, from mentoring and discipleship, and I mean, that just continued to carry on whenever I was privileged to be able to be there whenever Nancy McCready Ministries was launched that night. And then, since that time, seeing you and what God is doing in different nations and how that is just beginning to unfold. And I mean, I believe that, it's certainly unfolding already quite a bit, but I believe that it's something that we've not seen anything yet.
Yeah.
But having that privilege of being able to help, whether it's to help people put on a cross encounter or whatever that looks like, but I believe in this work. I mean, I've had the opportunity to we've done life together, and this is not simply a ministry. This is the way you live. And so I've seen
you
that.
Have seen us up close. Yes, you have.
Right. And so when you see that and that, I know that this life and what it is and the message that you are preaching and passing on to other people wherever it is that you're at, that I want to be something that's invested into that, because I want what the Father wants. And the Father has given you an assignment to go to nations and to continue to produce producers, not just people that are receiving life and that makes their life better, but they are producers of producers. And so it's a privilege for me to be able to be a part of it and to in the whatever fashion that we get that opportunity to whether it's teaching, whether it's going and helping other people put on cross encounters. It has been an honor to be able to do that, because I know that it is producing what it is that the Father wants. Because if it wasn't that, then I wouldn't be a part of it.
That's right.
So that's,
and you're close enough to know, if we'd lost our way, if we lost our way going right. But the same way you're on a learning curve, we are on a learning curve, right? So every day, as this is our way of life, then things are unfolding and we are learning. And we talk about that because partners really can, I joked the other day, and, we have the ministry house here. This isn't my personal house. I don't have all this up in my own personal house, right? This is the office, the ministry house. And I called it the pub the other day. It's a public house. That's what a pub is. It's a public house, right? And so, we think of a pub just as a place that you drink, but it's really a meeting house where the
Yeah.
public comes and families join together and they eat and all of that and get together. And I came in the other day and I said, this is the partner's house.
Yeah.
Right? That this is that place where we can come together and all. But partners can be really as involved as they choose to be. Some people are far away. They don't live close like you do. You live maybe 15 minutes from my house, and that's if you're a law-abiding citizen.
Right.
It's if you obey the speed limit, right? And so you're just a few miles, right, from our home and from this office. And that's great. And not all partners can do that. But people find eventually that if I say we want you to be a part of what we're doing, they eventually begin to find that we really mean that.
Yeah.
That this is something that is not exclusive to one person. You mentioned being a producer of producers. Well, that's a part of what we do. And what's the first thing that a producer has to learn? Is that they cannot produce anything. So you've watched us not be able to produce anything. You've watched what God is doing. You've seen it up close. You've chosen not to, because we always say around here, we don't want to act like we want your prayers when what we're really saying is, would you please financially give to the ministry? We want to be just straightforward about that. I certainly want people to pray, but without there being that solid base of giving that happens monthly, that happens, then we can't do everything that God has given us to do. And yet I would say that the financial is very necessary, but I would say literally the conversations, I think the conversations, and I'm pretty sure we're about to have another one because we're about to have dinner together tonight, right? All of us together, right?
Yes.
The fun part of that is going to be the conversations and talking about what just happened in Germany, talking about what's happening in y'all's life as you are doing, discipleship school and laughing together and all of that. But it's more than the finances, though we will not act like the finances don't matter. But the conversations that we've had, the prayers that we know, right? Every time I'm gone, I know that Trika is going to show me the map, the itinerary map that we've had. I mean, you can't know what that means when you're away from home and you really know whether they say one sentence or they pray an hour. That's not the point. The point is that they're mindful of our movements and what God is doing and are truly engaged. And they know that it's always, as you know, it's always reciprocal. It's not one direction, right? We pour in, there's a pouring in, there's a togetherness, because that's how the body of Christ is meant to work. We're not meant at Cross Encounter, when we have folks take communion, everyone takes it individually. Yeah. But then all the people that are working Cross Encounter, we all go to the table together, because God doesn't send people out to work alone and get torn up. And this is proof of that. Yeah. What partners are about is this, that we labor together in such a unique and powerful way.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's when that's when you have received something, you don't go around like a salesman and have to sell something, right? And that's, I love when you're, when you do have, something where you're raising, funds or whatever that is. I mean, because why would you be bashful about, asking for that when it's what is helping to produce life in others? And so, I mean, just so that, I mean, we are, I couldn't say it the way as good as you can, but I just know that, that we are honored to be able to be a part of that, and in many different aspects, because when you're not here, or when things are needed, that is just as much sowing into the ministry financially as it is in any other way. As friends of the ministry, as friends of both you and Wynn, is that life is being passed on through what it is that's being done.
That's right. That's right. And, this past year, God put something in my heart because, um, money should never drive ministry, right? But it is necessary to accomplish, but it shouldn't be the driving force of that. But God put a statement in my path. I heard someone talking. I wish I could remember who they were and give them credit, but I heard them say, the front lines are only as strong as the supply lines.
Yeah.
And so God began to talk to me about that. And I was like, wow, that is so true. That in war, the enemy knows no matter how strong the front lines are, no matter how trained they are, no matter how willing they are to take the hit and go out first, they can't accomplish what they're doing without the supply lines. So the enemy will oftentimes go to the supply lines and try to cut off communications, because part of what's communicated, right, is strategy, is encouragement, is direction, right? And the food, we like food, all of that, right? So the supply lines are what make the front lines possible. And this is part of what God said to me. He said, Nancy, your partners are supply lines to you as you're on the front lines, but then you turn around and you begin to become supply lines to others that are on the front lines. Yeah. So you're on the front lines at Christian City Fellowship. You're on the front lines right there doing what you're doing, right? So never in the kingdom of God is it all one direction.
Right.
Just take, consume. No, there's sowing, right? There's partnership, there's growth. And so when we realize the mutual encouragement that we bring to each other, we realize, man, this church stuff, this being in relationship, all of this is way more than what we've probably ever really known. And there is a true supply line that comes when we are connected with the right people. So all those years ago, when you were like, when what?
He had a plan.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
Yes, and you and I still laugh about it to this day. He had a plan. You're like, And when we look back at it, we're like, that is just so wild, right? Yeah. But we look and we see today, it's like, wow, the richness of this that has come about. And so I just know that when you and I were brought together for that mentoring and all of that years ago, the real intensive discipleship of your life, I don't know that either of us knew really where all of that was going to go. We've been discovering what God has had planned all along as we let it unfold. And we are on, I believe, the precipice of what God is doing around the world. And we're just one part of that, right? We haven't cornered the market on anything, but we're just doing what he's put within us. And we're on assignment, right? So I want to make sure that before we close out this conversation today, I want to make sure that people know what's available and what's coming up. As we're partnered together on many different levels, I want to make sure that you're an open door to all the folks that are listening and watching today, and that they know what's about to be available because you and I are partnering together. Yes. And so just tell them about that. What's going to happen at the end of March in about 6 weeks or so, right. At the end of March, tell them what's going to happen in Sealy, Texas.
Yeah. So we're going to have a cross encounter. It's going to be March 23rd through the 25th this March. So, so if you want to sign up, I would encourage you to. We've got folks already that are signed up from all over different parts of the United States. So wherever you're coming from, if you would like to come and join us for Cross Encounter, you can go to Christian or ccf.life/events. And then you just scroll down, you look for the graphic that's the Cross Encounter graphic. And you click on that and you can sign up. But it's going to be the 24th, 25th, and 23rd, 24th, and 25th of March. And so we are already gearing up, already praying for those that God is sending our way. It is going to be amazing to be able to be with people and for them to hear this message in here in the next about 5-6 weeks.
That's right. That's going to be awesome. So you and I are going to partner together because I'm going to do some of the sessions. you
Yes.
are going to do? Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I'll teach a little bit. You'll teach some, and then we'll have a couple other folks from Pavilion Ministries there. So it's going to be a group effort. I mean, because if it's just one person doing it,
Right.
right? I mean, are we really passing on this life, right? Are we really producing? And so whatever it is that he birthed, he means to mature, and that's what he's doing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, and that takes just the day in and day out, right? Building, living, choosing.
There's
Right?
nothing glamorous.
I was just about to say there's not very much that's glamorous about it, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else than with Wynn McCready. As we are moving together in Nancy McCready Ministries, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else than with the people that God has connected us with, which includes you and Trika. And we are very much looking forward to the Cross Encounter, where all of this kind of got started, all those years ago. Cross Encounter, March 23rd through the 25th, and they can get registered there, right? It's not, NMM isn't putting it on. We are just partnering now with you in what you are doing there at Christian City Fellowship. And it is, again, I can say that it is so very timely. And I know that we've got people, and really registration it's barely begun. It just opened online the other day. And yet you've already got several people, and some of them are coming from out of state, right? And, but of course it's for in-house. And so the people from Christian City that will watch this will know, hurry up and get registered and make sure that you take full advantage of what is right there in your church, the people that are there. And just like you connected with me and you crossed a few barriers to do that, then they can do the same, because it's ultimately about that the Father is drawing sons to himself. And so he puts us in these partnerships, right? He puts us in these for his purposes. And these are the kinds of relationships that I think are the richest and the strongest. And I look forward to what it's going to mean for Aaron and Trika Coronis to continue to be partners with Nancy McCready Ministries in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead. I know that I'm hopeful that as partners increase, that we're going to be able to increase our reach of what we're able to do, looking at doing a Cross Encounter Collective in the US of A. We just did it in Europe, brought together about 10 to 12 people there that we've been working with over many years, getting them ready to take the message out and to be able to do it. And so it looks like out of that Cross Encounter Collective, I'm going to be working with folks, and we're going to go into Norway. I mean, I'll be there doing Cross Encounter, but really it's them doing it and me working alongside them. And so I'm a big believer in that as we all mature, you have to let relationships unfold. And you always hope that those that you've poured into will go much, much further than you, much deeper, much further. They'll run stronger, right? And be able to see God get all that he wants. And Cross Encounter is just one aspect. It's just one gateway, opportunity for people to be able to enter in. So there are a lot of other things that we have that are about to begin to open up and formulate and begin to take shape, other structures that people can enter into. And I know that's a part of what you're building also, just like the discipleship school, simply building a structure that people can go click and register and walk into that structure and encounter God. And their life begins to be upended in the most powerful way. So there's an old proverb, I think it's an African proverb, that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. If you want to run far, run together. And to me, this is a part of it, is we're running far and we're doing it together. So as we close out, if there's anything else that you want to share, I want to hear it, and I want everybody else to hear it. So first thing is, if there's anything else that you'd like to share to bring encouragement, to bring understanding, I want you to do that. And then I want you to pray. I want to stand in agreement with you as you pray to close out today, to close out this awesome conversation we've been able to have today. I want you to be able to pray and to let's believe God for the sons that he's about to bring home. And so I'll trust you to do both of those things as we get ready to close. Okay.
Well, thank you. Yes, I know that God has not called us to be passive in this life, but He's called us to join with Him in doing what it is that He's doing in others, and so that is what we're called to do. So it's a privilege to be able to be a partner with Nancy McCready Ministries, and to be able to see the producing and also to be a part of that. As he is growing and maturing myself, he's growing, maturing you, and he is utilizing his sons and getting what he wants. So that's what this life is about. So it's a privilege to just be with him as he's doing what he's doing. So
okay, it sure is. Yeah. So let's pray.
Yes. So Father, I just thank you for the privilege of what sonship is, Father, just being with you and being a part of the movement, Father, that you are doing in and through your sons. So, Father, I just pray for those that are either signing up for Cross Encounter. Father, I pray for those that are going to be partnering with Nancy McCready Ministries and that already are a part of what it is that we're doing and what Nancy McCready Ministries is doing, Father, because we know that you have wanted sons from before the foundations of the world to move in oneness with you and to be one with you. And so, Father, I just thank you that as we're in our obedience, Father, and in those, as we're being doors for others, Father, that you are being that which moves us and guides us. And so, Father, I just thank you for it. I trust you, Father, with the hearts and the lives of those people that are hearing this today, Father, that they will lean into you and come into agreement with who you say that they are, and let them come and hear and know, Father, your faithfulness and who it is that you are, Father, so that they can begin to have a life and to live the life that you've always created them to be in oneness with you. So, Father, I thank you for it. I just speak a blessing over Nancy McCready Ministries, Father. I thank you for what Nancy and Wynn have been into my life, Father, so that we can now also be a pouring out into others, Father. And I just thank you for those people that were given for our lives. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Amen. Amen. I love that you said that at the very end. Man, the people given for our lives. Wow. We are rich in God and rich in friends. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you. I'm so glad to have been able to introduce you to a wider group of folks today, for them to be able to hear you. And thank you so much. And you know that I will see you soon.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.